next. I'm going to put my cards on the table here. I have some things I'm reasonably competent at, and some things I'm simply not. I can write a scene competently, describe something okay, come up with a story well enough to get by. I cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, draw. It actually goes so much further than that. Almost every graphic image you see on our stream was done by Luke. He does our banners and logos, the tokens for the maps you see on the stream, pretty much everything. There's a reason for that. Graphically, I am capable of making something that accurately conveys information. I am not able to make anything that looks interesting, engaging, artistic, or in any way unshit. I have built some amazingly sophisticated websites that frankly are text only because I simply can't do anything else. But here's the problem. When it comes to building a map, Luke is one of my players, so it is here that I must assemble it without his help, or guidance, or, being honest again, just getting out of his way and letting him do it. Fortunately, there are some tools out there designed to permit someone like me to make a map that is not merely accurate, or playable, but pretty appealing to look at. These people are amazing. They have given the gift of competence to people who have none, and do not deserve that gift. People like me. From time to time, I'm going to introduce one of these tools that I've found and use, and this time it's going to be RPG Map from Deepnight. Before RPG Map, I tended to use things like Inkscape to draw maps, and that's absolutely fine. It works, it's completely functional. Not only that, if you have any graphic skill, it can make maps look wonderful. But again, it's me we're talking about, so it can't make anything look wonderful. In order to make me vaguely competent, a mapping solution has to have three things. It has to be simple enough for me to use. It has to be capable of doing all the things needed to make a functional map. And it has to be able to make the very simple choices that I'm qualified to make look good. An RPG map does 2.5 of these things. Approximately. It is lacking a few features that would be very useful, because of the range of map areas I need. It doesn't do curved walls, for example. But it is fast and easy, and it does produce some excellent looking output. So let's take a look at RPG Map. A quick disclaimer. I've used it quite a bit, but I'm far from an expert. There may be plenty of things that I've overlooked or simply get entirely wrong. Obviously, where that happens, it's completely my fault. Don't take my word for anything unless you tried it for yourself. Actually, that's just generally pretty good advice for life, I think. Do not follow my advice unless you tried it for yourself. So this is what RPG Map looks like when you first load it. You create a map in terms of the size you want it to be in squares. And the whole grid here says it's 40 squares by 40 squares, but it offers various presets and you can create your own sizes if you prefer. You then have a sort of tool palette down the left-hand side up here, which you can use to put things on your map. Now, the sections here, walls, general, objects, pools, grounds, stairs and others, are in roughly the order you want to do them. It's not quite as simple as that, but generally speaking, start at the top and work your way down. It has three types of walls: square walls, cavern walls and diagonal walls. So for our purposes, we're going to use square walls and we're going to build ourselves a thing. It doesn't actually matter what the thing is at this point. So we are going to quickly assemble a thing. And that was a good example of how artistically gifted I am. There is bits in this wall that are not exactly going to look good. Okay, so we're going to build a sort of area and then connect it up together. And we've got a space here for a door we're going to put in. Now here, under General, there are tools to allow you to erase things, move things and pick them up. So we're not going to do that just yet. Instead, what we're going to do is take a look at objects. Objects, which include doors and windows and fences, and allow you to introduce any icon or image you like as well, allow you to build an environment for your setting. So you might decide, for example, you needed a door, like that one. All good. But you're probably looking at this and saying, this all seems very unclear at the moment. Well, it does, doesn't it? It all seems a bit murky. Well, there is a reason for that. We can choose what they call map aspect. So map aspect allows you to set up various things about how the map is presented. And it was foggy, because I'd set it to be foggy. We'll come back to that later. So, we've got walls and we've got a door. We're going to put in some more walls in order to provide some kind of interior connection. So here we go. There's a wall up here. And, well, that's a terrible idea. Anyway, it will do for our purposes. And there's a wall over here, like that. And there's one up here. Okay, and then we will go back to doors and we will poke holes in places where it makes sense to put holes. Okay, so our rooms are all connected. They have doors. You can move around inside this space. It's really that fast and it's really that simple. And because it's so easy to just get a grid and start drawing on it, it gives you that sense of freedom that you can just have a go. You can always change it later if you need to. Now, pools. Actually, I'm going to come back to pools, I think. Let's do grounds first. So there are a whole series of these, and broadly speaking, what they consist of is various terrain. You don't need to worry too much about the colour at this point, for pretty obvious reasons, that the colour is going to be something you can amend. You can choose how you want it to look. But in this case, we're going to rather arbitrarily decide that most of the area outside is sort of greenish, but not all of it. And there are places outside that are sort of rocky-ish. Like that. Okay, we've got some basic terrain features. Now inside we're going to put some stuff that looks a bit like flagstones. That's a bit too ambitious. Try that. There we go. There you go. So a slightly flagstony floor inside the building. And then we can decorate the outside a bit by going with things like trees. Now trees are great, partly because as you drop them you'll realise there's more than one type of tree. It just randomly chooses one. In fact, I don't think it is random. I have a feeling there's a little calculator somewhere inside saying if you're this far across and this far down, use this kind of tree. Because if you untree and retree, I think it always comes back with exactly the same tree. Yeah, see? So it does nonetheless look quite random. And if you want an entire area of tree, of course, you can draw out a block like that and create an entire forest. If you were watching the recent trip to the Cove that the boys from the Baltic Star undertook on Geeka, you'll have noticed a map that this does not entirely unresemble. So, then stuff. We can put stuff in. But before we do that, actually, let's drop some rocks. Rocks are good. Anything to add a bit of interest to your scenery is always good. And you see what I mean. Obviously, if you've got any actual artistic talent, you can do this, but do it much better than I can do it. But the tool really is this fast, and it really is this easy. I have, at the moment, nothing in mind that I'm actually designing. This is just a building that has stuff around it. But it's also about to have stuff in it. So let's take a look in here. So we can import images of one kind or another. We can drop in a character, which I've never really used, a measure for a scale, text on the thing. We'll come back to lights later. So if I click there with this icon or custom image, it cheerfully offers me a whole range of stuff. The stuff is broken into various sections. So if we pick something like, well, something that's different in width than it is in length, like that. This is a little bench. And we've dropped it in there. But we don't actually have to limit ourselves to that specific arrangement. We can, for example, rotate the bench, either in little increments or by using the sort of double right arrow here, entire 90-degree turns at a time. We can also set any object to be at different levels. Now this is extremely useful. I'm going to show you this in a second, but in order to do that, let's zoom in quite a lot. Okay? So imagine you were building something like a table. You're going to pop the table here. Great. Then you want to drop in another icon or custom image, and unsurprisingly this time it's going to be a chair. And in fact, we're going to drop in 3 chairs, say. All good. Now, I'm going to basically put this chair here, this one here up at the top, this one will go over here, and we'll put this one on the right. Then we're going to need to rotate that, and we're going to need to rotate that, which all sounds brilliant because obviously we have now moved the chairs into position around the table. Problem is, people don't leave chairs like that. They push them underneath, don't they? Ah, but that's all gone horribly, horribly wrong. Because these chairs are in fact on top. That's a problem. But you can set the location to be there, background. Set that location to be background, and suddenly your carefully placed chairs are underneath the table. It's ideal. Now, here we go. This is the clever bit. This is the bit that actually makes me think all possible mapping solutions must just bow their heads towards RPG Map. You want to have a map that's going to look good. And this map looks, well, let's face it, much better than I would easily be able to do with just a drawing package. This system, with all of its carefully designed walls and layouts and colour palettes and the way you can change a map to follow, to be printed in black and white or make it look like a blueprint, it's all good. But we can do even better. And let me draw your attention to this little function here. Light. You see, light can be dropped onto your map at any location you want. And then you can select how big you want it to be and how bright you want it to be and what colours you want it to be. Now that already looks pretty decent. But over here you have what they call a render mode. Draft shows you basically how all the squares are designed. Very useful when you're laying out your thing initially. Normal is the way that I tend to do it because it gives me the best overall guide of what's happening. When you take a look at best, however, it takes away any other things and gives you a sense of the finished product. But that light looks a bit, not really impressive, right? Remember that map aspect thing? Bring that back, and suddenly all of the way your place is, because you filled it with fog basically, the way your entire environment is lit is by light. So here's a trick. Window. We'll pop one there. Light. There. Size. Brightness. Now, if we zoom out a bit, I don't know how well you can see it. I hope you can see it okay. But that was a mistake. I meant to do that somewhere else. Let's do that here. Light, pop it there. There you go. You see how the tree is now casting a shadow away from that last light, and how the light is spilling out from the window. That isn't as clear, I must confess, but believe me, on the sort of fully rendered version, you can actually see this this light up here is illuminating the ground outside more clearly than where the light isn't falling. It is remarkably good. Let's see if that is actually more clear with over the rock. Might be. Try that. Put a light there. Maybe that's clearer. I don't know. The other alternative is put one literally on top. Now that's obviously much clearer now. But by controlling these lights, you can actually set up these quite atmospheric settings inside your world. just one other thing really to show you, because this matters. When you save the file using the save function here, it saves it as a JSON format file, which is very, very small file format used for web applications and for JavaScript and things like that. And this is great. This is very efficient. However, when you export, it gives you a number of options. And here's the thingy. You can actually choose various presets when you create your map. But one of the things you can do is this. You can export a grid size, so the number of pixels per square precisely matches, and I do mean precisely matches, the square for your mapping system. So it says here that there are the normal one they offer, which is the one I use for our mapping system. The normal one is 32 pixels per square. But they have preset here at 64, at 50, which is apparently what Fantasy Grounds uses, and at 70, which is what Roll20 apparently uses. Which I'm perfectly prepared to believe, even though I have absolutely no knowledge of this, you understand. I haven't actually loaded maps into those for any particular thing, but nonetheless, those are what I have historically done with this. We use 32 for our maps, so the ones I build for our maps. But if you're doing Roll20, for example, it says here use 70 pixels per grid. There's a preset in here you can use for that. You can also decide whether to show the grid or hide the grid, and any number of other settings. So, in essence, these are the kinds of options you can have in terms of your Deepnight settings. Right, so with that in mind, I think it is truthfully time just to say that was Deepnight RPG Map, which is an absolutely fabulous tool that makes me look truthfully vastly better at this than I have any right to be. And that's where we'll call it for tonight. I am very, very grateful to you for turning up and listening to what I have to say. Many, many thanks for that. I really do appreciate that greatly. I hope you get some use or some fun out of it, or ideally both, if that's possible. To stay in touch with all things Baltic Star, you can always follow us on Twitter, @BoysBaltic. We're currently in what we call our Summer of Love, which means giveaways and special events up until almost the end of this month. We stream our regular Traveller campaign on Fridays. That's 10:30 PM UK time. Every Thursday evening at 11, we stream something a bit more random, though still RPG related. And this Thursday, because it's the Summer of Love, we're playing a one-sheet one-shot, led by Ewan, of You Are 100 Goblins in Space, and it's bound to be both chaotic and fun, I suspect. If you follow us on Twitch, then you'll be notified when we're streaming, which I certainly find very useful for the other channels I follow. As always, please let me know if there's something RPG related that you'd be interested in hearing me chat about. And up until next time, thank you once again, and good night.